John had never expected his space mission to take this turn. It was supposed to be a simple exploration of a nearby alien station, but now it felt like he had entered a world far beyond his understanding. His ship had docked at a strange, uncharted station floating deep in the darkness of space. The station wasn't like any John had seen before. Its walls were made of an unfamiliar material that shimmered in the dim light, and its corridors twisted in ways that didn't make sense. The air was thick with mystery, and every step he took echoed in the silence. As a trained astronaut, John was no stranger to unknown environments. But the more he explored the station, the more uneasy he felt. There were no signs of life, no other beings or even signs of technology functioning. It was as if the place had been abandoned for centuries, but something was different about it. There was an energy here, a strange pull that seemed to draw him deeper into the heart of the station. After hours of wandering through the corridors, John finally discovered what seemed to be the station's core. It was a large, circular room with a glowing blue light at its center. The air in the room was colder, almost as if it had been sealed away from the rest of the station for a long time. At the center of the room was a chamber, an ancient-looking structure, its design unlike anything John had ever seen before. It had strange markings and symbols etched into its surface, and it appeared to be made of a smooth, metallic material that seemed to hum with life. John felt an overwhelming curiosity as he approached the chamber. He had to know what it was. He moved closer, and that's when he noticed a control panel on the side of the structure. It was covered in dust, but it still had a faint glow to it, as though it had been waiting for someone to activate it. With no clear understanding of what he was dealing with, John pressed a button on the panel. The moment his finger touched the button, the chamber hummed loudly, its walls beginning to shift and rearrange. The air around him crackled with energy. Before he could react, a loud hiss echoed through the room. And suddenly, the chamber opened with a burst of light. John stepped back, his heart racing as the light filled the room. And then, out of nowhere, a figure appeared in the center of the chamber. A woman. Her skin was a pale blue, almost purplish, and she had sharp, delicate features that looked both alien and strangely beautiful. Her hair was long and flowing, and her eyes glowed with an unnatural light. She wore a strange, shimmering outfit that seemed to change color as she moved, making her look like she was made of the stars themselves. John stood frozen, his mouth slightly agape. He had never seen anything like her before. She wasn't human. He knew that instantly. But there was something about her presence that made him feel connected. It was as if she had been waiting for him, just as much as he had been waiting for the answers to the mysteries of this station. The alien woman's eyes locked onto his. Her gaze was intense, almost too intense. She tilted her head, as if studying him carefully, before speaking in a voice that was both melodic and strange, the words unfamiliar but somehow clear to him. "You are here," she said, her voice soft but firm. "You have come." John blinked, still trying to process what was happening. I didn't mean to come here. I was just exploring." She seemed to understand his confusion, but her expression did not change. She raised her hand, and the air around them shifted again. The chamber's walls closed, sealing them inside. "The chamber is malfunctioning," she said, her tone softening. "You were not meant to enter. But now, you are here. You are with me." John's mind raced. What was she talking about? Malfunctioning. What did she mean by "with me"? He felt a chill run down his spine as the realization hit him. He wasn't alone anymore. But this wasn't just a regular encounter. This was something far more complicated than he had ever imagined. Before he could respond, the chamber's doors closed completely, and the alien woman took a step toward him. "You cannot leave," she said, her voice now tinged with a strange mix of sadness and determination. "The bond has been formed. The chamber is chosen." John's heart skipped a beat. The bond. Chosen? What are you talking about? He stepped back, his hands raised, unsure of what to do next. "I don't want any bond. I just want to get out of here." The woman didn't seem to hear him. She reached out, her hand brushing against his arm. Her touch was cold, yet it felt oddly comforting. "The chamber's purpose is clear," she continued, her voice gentle. "It is meant to bond. You are now my partner. There is no leaving." John's thoughts raced. This was insane. He had to get out of here. He didn't know who this woman was or why he was involved in whatever this was, but he couldn't deny the strange pull he felt toward her. It wasn't just the physical connection, but something deeper, something that went beyond reason. He turned away, scanning the chamber for a way out, but there was nothing. The walls seemed to close in around him, the air thick with tension. The alien woman watched him, her expression unreadable. "You can't leave," she repeated, her voice a whisper now. "Not unless you repair the chamber." "But the chamber is broken, and only you can fix it." John didn't know how to respond. He wasn't sure what he had just stepped into, but he knew one thing. His world had just been turned upside down. The chamber was broken. The alien woman was here, and somehow he was connected to her in a way that he couldn't explain. He had no idea what was coming next, but it was clear that his journey on this strange station had only just begun. John's mind was racing. He couldn't comprehend what had just happened. How had he gone from being a space explorer on a simple mission to being trapped inside an alien station with a woman who claimed he couldn't leave? It didn't make sense. His heart pounded in his chest as he turned around, trying to make sense of his surroundings. The chamber's walls were smooth, cold, and unyielding. There was no way out. He looked at the woman. Zilara, she had called herself. Her presence was overwhelming, not just physically but emotionally. Every time their eyes met, John felt a strange connection. It was as if something beyond logic was pulling them together, a bond that seemed impossible to ignore. "What do you mean, the chamber has chosen?" John asked, his voice shaky but determined. "What is this place? Why can't I leave?" Zilara's expression softened as she moved closer, her delicate features filled with both confusion and sadness. She seemed to struggle with explaining what had happened, as if she was searching for the right words in a language John could understand. "The chamber," she began slowly, "was built by my people long ago. It is a place where we are united, where our connection is sealed. The malfunction, it caused something unexpected. The chamber was not meant to bond with a human, but now that it has, we are connected." John took a step back, his heart racing. "A bond? But I'm not. I'm not one of you. I'm human. I don't belong here. I don't understand any of this." Zilara nodded, her pale blue skin almost glowing in the dim light of the chamber. "I know. This was never supposed to happen. The chamber was designed for my kind, to ensure survival and continuation. But now it is broken, and the bond is formed between us." John's mind was still spinning. He had to get out of here. He didn't know how, but he couldn't stay. Not like this. "Okay, let me go, and I'll figure out a way to fix it. I just need to leave. I'm not supposed to be here." Zilara shook her head. "You do not understand. You cannot fix it alone. The bond between us is something that cannot be broken easily. If you leave, I will be alone again, trapped in the malfunction. The bond will not fade until the chamber is whole again, and only you can repair it." John paused, trying to make sense of her words. The bond, her loneliness. He could see the fear in her eyes, an emotion he hadn't expected from an alien. He felt a pang of sympathy for her, but that didn't change the fact that he needed to find a way out. He couldn't stay here, not forever. "Then what do you expect me to do?" he asked, frustration creeping into his voice. "How am I supposed to fix something I don't even understand?" Zilara stepped back, her expression thoughtful. "The technology in this chamber is ancient. It was built long before humans reached the stars. The controls, they are unlike anything you've seen. But I believe you can help. You are human, and your species has great potential for creativity. That is why the chamber has chosen you." John shook his head in disbelief. "I don't know what to do. I'm just a guy who flew his ship here by accident. I didn't sign up for any of this." Zilara didn't seem to hear his frustration. She moved toward a large panel in the chamber center, which had once been glowing but was now dimmed. The panel was covered in strange symbols, none of which John could recognize. He had no idea how to even begin repairing something so alien. "This chamber, it is more than just a place," Zilara continued, her voice low. "It is a part of my people's history. It ensures the survival of our kind. The bond it forms is sacred, but now it is broken, and I do not know how to fix it either." John stared at the panel, trying to make sense of the symbols. He could feel the weight of Zilara's gaze on him, as if she were waiting for him to do something, to act. The pressure of the situation was overwhelming. He wasn't sure if he was ready for this, but it seemed like there was no other choice. He glanced at Zilara. "So if I can somehow repair this chamber, you'll let me go?" Zilara's expression softened, but there was an undeniable sadness in her eyes. "It is not that simple. Even if you fix the chamber, the bond may not be broken. You will always be part of me, as I will always be part of you." John couldn't help but feel a surge of emotion at her words. There was something undeniably deep about the way she spoke, something that resonated with him on a level he couldn't explain. He had never felt so confused, so torn between wanting to escape and feeling a strange sense of responsibility toward her. He let out a long breath, rubbing his forehead. "I don't even know how to begin, Zilara. This isn't something I can fix. I'm just one man." Zilara stepped closer again, her alien eyes meeting his. "But you are more than just one man. You are human. Your kind has always found ways to overcome the impossible. It is your strength, your ingenuity, your creativity that makes you capable. I believe in you." John didn't know if he was ready for this challenge, but there was something in her words that made him think he might just have to try. He didn't want to abandon her. He couldn't. He had no idea how this bond had formed, but something inside him told him that if he didn't at least try to help, things would only get worse. "All right," John said, a quiet determination settling over him. "I'll try. I'll figure out how to fix this. But you have to promise me, Zilara, that you won't try to keep me here once I do." Zilara nodded slowly, a small, hopeful smile forming on her lips. "I promise. But remember, the bond. It will never fully break. We are now connected." John stared at her for a long moment. He didn't fully understand everything that was happening, but one thing was certain. This was going to be the hardest thing he had ever done. John sat cross-legged on the cold metal floor of the chamber, staring at the glowing panel in front of him. The symbols were still a mystery, flickering as if they had a life of their own. He had no idea where to begin. His mind was racing, but nothing about the technology in front of him made sense. How was he supposed to fix something so complex, something so alien? Zilara stood nearby, watching him closely, her pale blue skin glowing softly in the dim light. She hadn't spoken for a while, but John could feel her presence in the room, filling the space with an energy that was both comforting and unsettling. It was strange. He couldn't deny that there was a connection between them now. A bond, as she had called it. But how was that even possible? "Can you explain it to me again?" John asked, his voice more tired than frustrated. "What exactly happened when the chamber malfunctioned?" Zilara stepped forward, her movements graceful and fluid. She knelt down beside him, her gaze gentle yet intense. "The chamber was designed for my kind, as a way to ensure the survival of our species. It binds us together, physically and emotionally. But when you entered, something changed. The chamber adapted to your presence, forming a bond between us." John frowned. "But we're not the same. I'm human. You're not. We're different in every way." Zilara's eyes softened. "Yes, we are different. But there is something in your kind that the chamber recognized, something that allowed the bond to form despite the difference. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Perhaps it is your curiosity, your creativity. The chamber sensed that, and it chose you. John shook his head. I don't know what you mean by creativity or why the chamber would choose me. But I don't want this. I just want to fix it and leave. Zilara reached out, touching his arm gently. Her hand was cool, yet there was a warmth to it that sent a shiver down John's spine. He couldn't help but notice how natural her touch felt, how it seemed to ease the tension that had built up in his shoulders. You are not alone, John, she said quietly. The bond is not just a mistake. It is a part of us now. Even if you fix the chamber, I do not know if we can break it completely. John felt his heart race. He had expected to feel relief at the thought of fixing the chamber, but instead, he felt conflicted. There was something about Zilara's words that made him question everything he had assumed about the situation. He took a deep breath. So what now? What do I do? Zilara looked down at the panel again. We try to understand the technology together. I can help guide you, but only if you are willing. I have lived with this chamber for many cycles, but I do not know everything. The malfunction is beyond me. John looked at the symbols again, trying to make sense of them. They seemed to move, changing before his eyes, as though they were alive. It was maddening. He didn't know how he could possibly fix something that seemed so foreign to him. He wasn't even sure where to start. You're asking me to trust you, John said slowly, his voice a little unsure. Zilara nodded, her eyes soft. Yes, I know this is difficult for you, but I believe that if we work together, we can find a way. My people, they once lived in harmony with technology like this. Perhaps you, as a human, can unlock what is lost. John sighed, rubbing his temples. He hadn't signed up for this. He had never imagined that his simple mission to explore an abandoned station would lead him to this strange emotional bond with an alien. And yet, as much as he wanted to deny it, he couldn't ignore the pull he felt toward Zilara. It was unlike anything he had ever experienced. I don't know if I can do this, John admitted, his voice low. Zilara's gaze softened even more. You have already done more than you realize. You came here. You saw me. And you stayed. John looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. She wasn't just a strange alien from another world. She was someone. Someone who had been trapped here, alone, for who knew how long. He could see the sadness in her eyes, the loneliness that had been with her for cycles. He couldn't just leave her behind, not without at least trying. All right, he said finally, his voice steadier now. I'll try. I'll do whatever I can. Zilara smiled, a small but genuine smile. Thank you. With a new sense of determination, John turned his attention back to the control panel. He started to study it more closely, trying to make sense of the symbols. Some of them seemed to repeat, like a pattern. He focused on them, mentally mapping out the design as best as he could. It wasn't much, but it was something. Zilara stood beside him, watching silently as he worked. She didn't say anything, but John could feel her presence beside him, like a steady, calming force. Her quiet strength gave him a sense of peace, even though the situation was far from peaceful. He wasn't sure if he was fixing the chamber or just trying to distract himself from the strange feelings growing inside him. Minutes passed, then hours. John's mind ached as he stared at the symbols, but little by little, they began to make sense. He had no idea what he was doing, but something about the way Zilara had spoken about her people, about the bond, seemed to spark something in him. Maybe it was his own human instinct to fix things, to make sense of chaos. Zilara, John said, breaking the silence. I think I might be onto something. Zilara looked at him, her eyes wide with cautious hope. What do you mean? I don't know yet, he replied, his voice full of uncertainty. But I think maybe I can reverse the malfunction. It's just going to take time. Zilara nodded, her face lighting up with a mixture of hope and relief. Then we will work together. Slowly, step by step. John nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. As much as he wanted to leave, as much as he had fought against the bond, something in him told him that this was where he was supposed to be for now. Whether he fixed the chamber or not, whether he left or stayed, one thing was clear. Things were changing between him and Zilara, and he couldn't ignore it. Days passed, and John's sense of time became harder to track. The chamber was quiet and lost of the time, save for the low hum of the alien machinery. He spent most of his waking hours studying the symbols on the control panel, trying to make sense of the ancient technology that seemed to be beyond his understanding. Despite his best efforts, the symbols didn't seem to reveal any easy answers. Some of them shifted when he touched them, while others stayed stubbornly still. The more he worked, the more questions arose. Was the malfunction truly his fault? Or had it been a failure of the chamber itself, a problem that couldn't be fixed no matter how hard he tried? Zilara had remained at his side, offering her knowledge of the chamber's history and the culture of her people. She explained the chamber's design, its original purpose, and its sacred importance. At times, her words felt like a distant echo of something ancient, a reminder of the weight this malfunction carried, not just for her, but for her entire species. One evening, after hours of working together in silence, John stood up abruptly, frustration written on his face. He ran a hand through his hair. "I can't do this," he muttered, pacing around the room. "I can't keep trying to fix something I don't understand. This isn't working." Zilara watched him, her expression calm but concerned. "You are trying, John. That is all that matters." John shook his head. "It's not enough. I've been here for days, and the chamber's still not working. We're no closer to a solution than when I started." He stopped pacing and turned to face her, his eyes filled with both exhaustion and determination. "I'm not giving up, but I need to get out of here. I have to figure out how to fix this, and I can't do it if I'm trapped in this place." Zilara stood, slowly walking toward him. "You cannot leave. Not yet." John felt a cold shiver run through him. He had known she would say this, but hearing it again made the reality even harder to accept. "I can't stay here forever, Zilara. I have a life back home. A family. A job. Things I can't just abandon." Zilara's gaze softened, but there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. "I understand. But the bond, John, it is not something that can be easily broken. You are connected to me now. To leave would mean abandoning the bond, and that could harm both of us." John took a deep breath. "You're asking me to choose between fixing the chamber and staying with you. That's not a choice. I don't want this bond, but I don't want to hurt you either." Zilara stepped closer, placing a hand gently on his shoulder. "I do not want to force you, John. I only want to explain. The bond is a part of me now, but it does not mean you are trapped here forever. The chamber malfunctioned because of you, but I believe that together we can restore its balance. That is all I am asking." John closed his eyes for a moment, trying to calm the storm of thoughts racing through his mind. He wasn't sure if it was the alien technology, his growing feelings for Zilara, or the overwhelming pressure of the situation that made everything seem so difficult. But one thing was clear. He couldn't keep running from the truth. The bond was real. Whether he liked it or not, it had already changed everything. "I'll keep trying," John finally said, his voice steady despite the confusion he still felt. "But I can't keep working in circles. We need to find a way to fix this faster, or I'll go mad." Zilara nodded, her eyes filled with understanding. "We can try different methods. The chamber systems are complex, but if we work together, we may be able to find the right sequence. We have only one chance, John." John couldn't help but admire her resolve. Despite her alien nature, despite the confusion and fear that had taken root in his heart, Zilara was not giving up. She believed in him, and for some reason, that made him want to believe in her too. Over the next few days, they explored different approaches, trying everything from reconfiguring the symbols to rerouting the energy flow through the chamber. Each attempt brought them closer to understanding the malfunction, but progress was slow. John began to wonder if they were getting anywhere at all. One evening, after another long and unsuccessful attempt, John collapsed into a chair, exhausted and frustrated. "This is hopeless," he muttered, rubbing his face with both hands. Zilara sat beside him, her expression thoughtful but patient. "We are not hopeless. We are learning. We just need more time." John sighed, leaning back in the chair. "I don't know how much more time I can take. I feel like I'm losing myself in all of this, and every time I get closer to the solution, the bond between us feels stronger." Zilara's eyes softened with compassion. "The bond is not a curse, John. It is a gift. But I understand why it frightens you. It frightens me as well. I was not meant to form a bond with a human. I was meant to be alone." John turned to face her, his voice quieter. "You're not alone anymore." For a moment, neither of them spoke. There was an unspoken understanding between them, a moment of connection that transcended the strange and complicated situation they were in. Zilara had been alone for so long, just as John had felt alone in his struggles. But in this chamber, they had found each other. "We'll figure this out," John said at last, standing up and brushing off his clothes. "I won't give up. I can't. Not now. For both of us." Zilara nodded, a small smile on her lips. "We will find a way together." John turned back to the control panel, his eyes scanning the symbols once again. The weight of the task ahead still felt overwhelming, but there was a new resolve within him. He was no longer just trying to escape. He was fighting for something more, something that connected him to Zilara in ways he couldn't yet understand, but knew were important. The tension between them was still there, but it had shifted. Now it was no longer just about escaping the chamber. It was about facing the unknown together, whatever that might mean. And as John resumed his work on the control panel, he couldn't help but feel that, for the first time since he had arrived, he might actually be on the verge of something important, something that could change both their lives. John sat in front of the glowing control panel, his hands hovering over the strange symbols that seemed to pulse with energy. He had been working nonstop for hours, trying to decipher the symbols and find a way to fix the malfunction. But no matter how many times he attempted to rearrange them, the panel would only blink in response, offering no real answers. He felt as though he was stuck in a never-ending cycle, one that was slowly eating away at his patience. Beside him, Zilara watched quietly, her presence as constant as the hum of the chamber. She had been a silent partner in the task, offering what little guidance she could, but she had her own limitations. Her people's knowledge of this technology was long gone, and now she was just as lost as John. Still, there was a steady calm to her, an unwavering belief that together they could fix the chamber. But as the hours stretched on, John began to doubt that belief. "I don't know if I can keep doing this," John muttered, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "Every time I think I'm getting closer, I hit another wall." Zilara tilted her head, her large, luminous eyes studying him carefully. "You are trying your best, John. That is all that matters." John shook his head, standing up and walking to the far end of the chamber. His boots clicked against the floor, and the silence felt heavier with each step he took. "It's not enough. We're not getting anywhere. And the more time I spend here, the more I feel connected to you. I don't know what that means, but I can't deny it." Zilara's voice followed him, soft and steady. "The bond was never meant to happen. But now that it exists, we cannot ignore it. We are connected, and that connection is what brought us here." John stopped and turned to face her. He could see the sadness in her eyes. She was trapped just as much as he was. "I don't want to be trapped here," he said quietly. "I want to fix this, but I also want to go home. I didn't ask for any of this. I didn't sign up for it." Zilara stepped closer, her expression filled with empathy. "I know you didn't ask for this. I didn't either. But the bond is a part of us now. I cannot pretend it does not exist, and neither can you." John swallowed hard, the weight of her words pressing down on him. He knew she was right. There was no denying the connection. It wasn't just physical. There was something deeper, something emotional that tied them together. But that connection was also what made everything so complicated. If they couldn't fix the chamber, would he be stuck here forever? And if they did manage to repair it, what would that mean for their bond? "I don't know what to do anymore," John confessed. "I don't even know if I want to fix it. But I don't want to hurt you, Zilara." Zilara's eyes softened, and she placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch gentle yet firm. "You cannot hurt me, John. The bond is not a punishment. It is part of who we are now. But if you want to leave, if you want to go home, I will not stop you." John stared at her, searching her face for any sign of anger, but there was none. Just quiet understanding. It was then that he realized how much she had been hiding from him. Her own fears, her own doubts. She wasn't just a stranger from another world. She was a being who had been isolated for far too long. Someone who had been waiting for connection, just like him. "Zilara." John started, but the words caught in his throat. He wasn't sure what he was going to say or how to say it. He wasn't even sure what he felt anymore. "You don't have to say anything," Zilara interrupted softly. "I understand. You are conflicted. You want to fix the chamber, but you also want to escape. I do not blame you." John felt a pang of guilt. "But I don't want to leave you behind. That's the problem. I've never been in a situation like this before. I don't know what to do." Zilara nodded slowly, her gaze unwavering. "The bond between us will always be there, whether you stay or go. But the choice is yours. If you decide to leave, I will not stop you. But know that the bond will remain." John's heart raced. Could he really leave? Could he walk away from her and from this strange, growing connection between them? His mind screamed for him to fix the chamber, to find a way to escape. But something inside him held him back. The idea of walking away from Zilara felt like tearing something precious apart. He looked at the control panel one last time. The symbols still flickered, but they were no longer as intimidating. Perhaps there was a way to fix this. Perhaps there was a way to leave and still preserve what they had, to fix the chamber without destroying the bond. But he couldn't be sure. Taking a deep breath, John turned back to Zilara. "I'll fix it," he said, his voice filled with new determination. "But not just to leave. I'll fix it because we need to understand it, both of us. This bond, it's part of something bigger, isn't it?" Zilara's eyes lit up with a mixture of hope and relief. "Yes, the bond is a gift, John, but we must choose how to handle it." John stepped toward the panel again, feeling a sense of purpose that he hadn't had before. The malfunction was not just a problem to solve. It was part of something much more complex, something that connected him to Zilara in ways he still didn't fully understand. But he wasn't afraid anymore. He was ready to face whatever came next, with Zilara by his side. He reached out and touched the control panel, this time with a sense of calm determination. "Let's fix this, together." Zilara stood beside him, her presence comforting and steady. As John began to work, he realized that no matter what the outcome, this journey had already changed him forever. And whether he stayed or left, he knew one thing for certain. The bond between him and Zilara was something he would never forget. John stood before the control panel, his fingers hovering just above the strange, glowing symbols. The chamber was eerily silent, the only sound being the soft hum of the machinery surrounding him. It was as if the entire station was holding its breath, waiting for him to make the next move. He had worked for days, trying to fix the malfunction, but every time he thought he was close to a solution, the panel would flicker and the symbols would shift, resetting everything. It was frustrating. It was exhausting. But now, something was different. There was no more confusion, no more hesitation. John had made up his mind. He wasn't just fixing the chamber to leave. He was doing it to understand it, to understand the bond that had been formed between him and Zilara. This wasn't just about escape anymore. It was about the choice he had to make, and what it meant for both of them. Zilara stood quietly beside him, watching him closely. Her gaze was steady, her calm presence like a rock in the midst of a storm. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. She knew what was happening. John knew it too. They were at a crossroads, and whatever choice he made now would change everything. John took a deep breath, steadying himself. He had tried to ignore it, tried to push it aside, but the truth was clear now. This bond, this strange connection, was real. He couldn't pretend it wasn't there anymore. It wasn't just a malfunction. It wasn't just some accident. The bond had formed because it was meant to, because they were meant to be connected. And that scared him more than anything else. "I've been thinking," John began, his voice low but steady. "I thought fixing this was the answer. I thought if I just repaired the chamber, everything would go back to normal. I'd leave, and everything would be fine." Zilara remained silent, but her eyes watched him closely. She had always been patient, always giving him space to think, to make his own decisions. But John could see the worry in her eyes, the fear that he might choose to leave her behind. "But it's not that simple, is it?" John continued. "I can't just walk away from you. I can't walk away from the bond we formed." Zilara's gaze softened. "No, you cannot walk away. Not without consequences." John turned toward her, searching her face for any sign of uncertainty. But there was none. She was sure of herself, sure of the bond. And that made him both afraid and strangely comforted. She wasn't asking him to stay. She was asking him to understand, to accept what had happened. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," John admitted. "I don't know if I can accept what's happened between us. But I do know one thing. I don't want to leave you behind, Zilara." Her eyes brightened with emotion, but she said nothing. Instead, she stepped closer to him, placing a hand on his arm in a gesture that was both comforting and reassuring. She didn't need to say anything. Her touch spoke volumes, and John felt the warmth spread through him. "You do not need to decide all at once," Zilara said softly. "Take your time. The bond will not force you. It is a part of us, but it does not control you." John nodded, though his thoughts were still swirling. The bond was undeniable. Every time he tried to resist it, every time he tried to pull away, it pulled him back. It wasn't something he could just walk away from. But that didn't mean he had to give in to it either. He had a choice, and he needed to make it. "Okay," John said, turning back to the control panel. "Let's fix this together. Not just for me, not just for you, but for both of us." Zilara's smile was small but genuine. "Together," she repeated, her voice filled with a quiet strength. John's hands moved over the symbols, tracing them with a newfound sense of purpose. This time, there was no panic, no frustration. He was no longer just trying to escape. He was trying to understand. He was trying to fix something broken, not just the chamber, but the very connection that had formed between him and Zilara. He focused on the patterns, the way the symbols seemed to connect with each other, as if they were part of a much larger puzzle. It wasn't just about moving symbols around. It was about understanding their relationship to each other, how they interacted, how they could be aligned to restore the chamber. With Zilara's gentle guidance, he began to see the connections. The symbols started to make sense, like pieces of a map that were slowly coming together. As they worked, John felt the tension in his chest begin to ease. He wasn't alone in this anymore. Zilara was right beside him, her presence a steady force. And as they worked together, John began to realize something else. It wasn't just the chamber that was malfunctioning. It was their understanding of each other, their understanding of the bond that had formed between them. The more they worked, the more they understood. Hours passed, and the panel slowly began to respond. The symbols shifted, aligning in ways that John hadn't thought possible. The hum of the machinery grew louder, and a new light began to glow from the center of the chamber. "Look," Zilara said softly, her voice filled with awe. John followed her gaze and smiled. For the first time in days, he felt a sense of accomplishment, a sense of hope. They were doing it. They were fixing the malfunction. Together. But as the light grew brighter, something else began to shift. The bond between them deepened, no longer a mystery, no longer something to fear. John realized that the connection they shared wasn't something to escape from. It was something to embrace. Zilara turned to him, her eyes filled with a quiet understanding. "The chamber is responding. You have done it, John." John nodded, his heart beating faster. "No, we've done it." And in that moment, surrounded by the hum of the chamber and the soft glow of the light, John understood. The bond wasn't a curse. It wasn't something to fear. It was a part of who they were, a part of what brought them together. "Together," he whispered, a new understanding settling into his heart. The chamber was still, the soft hum of the machinery the only sound filling the space around John and Zilara. The light from the control panel glowed steadily, a gentle pulse of energy that seemed to mark the passage of time. John stepped back, his fingers still hovering over the symbols, his mind racing. The chamber was functioning again, responding to the repairs they had made together, but something had changed. Something inside him had shifted. Zilara stood quietly beside him, her eyes watching him with a mixture of curiosity and patience. She had said so little over the past few hours, letting him work in silence. She had trusted him to fix the malfunction, and now it seemed they had done it. The symbols were aligned, the energy flowing, and the chamber was no longer broken. But the connection between them was still there, stronger than ever. John turned to Zilara, feeling the weight of the decision that was now before him. The bond between them, which had once seemed like a burden, was now something different. It wasn't something he could run from. It was a part of him, a part of them both. The question was no longer about escaping or leaving. It was about what he wanted from this bond, what they both wanted. I think it's working," John said, his voice steady but filled with uncertainty. "The chamber's fixed, Zilara. But now what?" Zilara smiled softly, the warmth of her expression comforting. "Now we decide." John took a deep breath, looking around the chamber. The bright light from the control panel had faded into a soft glow, and the air seemed lighter, less heavy with the tension that had filled it before. Everything felt different now. He wasn't sure what it was, whether it was the repairs, the bond, or something deeper, but it was as though the chamber had finally brought them together in a way that made sense. "I never imagined something like this happening," John admitted, his voice quiet as he met her gaze. "I came here for a mission. I thought I was just exploring, just passing through. But now, I don't know what to do. I don't know where I belong." Zilara stepped closer to him, her presence gentle but firm. "You belong here, John. Not just in this chamber, but with me. We are connected, and that connection is real. But I understand your fear. I understand your confusion." John looked down, his mind swirling. He had always thought of himself as someone who knew what he wanted, someone who was in control. But now he felt lost. The bond between him and Zilara wasn't something he could control, wasn't something he could walk away from. It had changed everything. "I don't know if I can stay here, Zilara," he said, his voice filled with a mixture of regret and uncertainty. "I don't know if I can stay with you forever." Zilara's eyes softened, and she placed a hand gently on his arm. "You do not have to decide forever, John. You only need to decide what you want now, what you want in this moment." John thought for a moment, considering her words. What did he want? It was so simple, yet so complicated. He didn't know if he was ready to commit to the bond, to this connection between them. He didn't know if he was ready to stay in this alien world, with no way of knowing what the future would hold. But then, as he looked at Zilara, he realized something. It wasn't about staying or leaving. It wasn't about fixing the chamber or running away. It was about being true to himself, and being true to what he had come to feel for her. "I've been running from this bond," John said quietly, "but I think I was running from myself too. I was afraid of what it meant. But now I see that it's not something to fear. It's something that's part of who I am, part of who we are. Zalara's expression brightened, her eyes shining with emotion. You do not have to fear it, John. You do not have to be afraid of me. John smiled, his heart feeling lighter than it had in days. I'm not afraid of you, Zalara. I never was. With that, something shifted inside him. The tension that had been building between them, the confusion, the uncertainty, it all seemed to melt away. In that moment, John realized that the connection between them was not something he had to control. It was something that would grow, something that would evolve, as long as they both allowed it to. He reached out and gently took Zalara's hand. I'm ready, he said, his voice steady. I'm ready to see where this bond takes us. I'm ready to face it with you. Zalara smiled, her eyes filled with relief and joy. Together then, she said softly. John nodded, his heart swelling with emotions he couldn't quite explain. The chamber, the bond, the strange connection, they were all a part of something bigger than either of them had expected. But in that moment, standing together in the chamber they had repaired, John felt a sense of peace. The uncertainty that had clouded his mind was gone, replaced by a quiet certainty. We don't have to have all the answers, John said, his voice gentle. We just need to move forward together. Zalara nodded, squeezing his hand. Yes, together. And so, as the soft hum of the chamber filled the air around them, John and Zalara stood together, no longer strangers but partners in something new, something unknown. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, John felt ready to face it, whatever it might bring. The chamber's light flickered one last time, and the connection between them remained, not a burden but a bond that had brought them together, and one that would shape their journey from that moment on.